soon, but I'm gonna assume that it already. Yeah, we're recording. Cool.
Nice.
Cool. All right, so April 22. We got so far it's just a couple of us lifties in here. Should have had this pre-filled already. Actually, how embarrassing. Now, Kunal and Nicholas, you guys feel free to go and fill in this doc too now.
Gotcha.
I'll start pre-filling some of the topics I kind of want to talk about. We got a generalized loader. We got, I think that Ryan Lane put up a PR for Docker Compose. I think.
Ryan Lane? No way.
Yeah. You got to get up to date in the channel.
That's so cool.
Yeah, you should check that out. Actually,
I haven't. Let me take a.
Yeah, Docker Compose is great.
I love it.
Yeah. So there's that. Those are the two things that I have on my radar so far in the open source world. Let me just take a skim of the repo real fast. Yeah, nothing at the moment.
Hey, can we move the Lyft open source Slack to premium? Is that a thing we can do, or probably not?
That is, I think that's something that Derek was talking about.
Okay.
I think that he was taking point on that because Clutch has like a lot of messages also, and then they have a lot of members too. So
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that we're running out of messages on the open source stuff on the free Slack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I guess with that, before I get into any of these topics, like how did last month go? Thanks for running the meeting, by the way.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it was pretty good, pretty casual. At first, it was just me talking about myself for 15 minutes. Went over the new Azure support. There's a bunch of PRs about that. I think there's one really big PR in particular that added a bunch of Azure support. So I went over that. Briefly talked about how we use cartography for ball management at Lyft, without giving away too much, but kind of a precursor to a blog post hopefully coming up about that. Christoph joined in. We're talking about some funky bugs with multi-account sync and parallelization, stuff like that. And then the last 1/3 or half or so, Nicholas and I talked about ETL, proper ETL for ingestion and for reporting. So ETL can really be the we'll get really fancy with it. ETL, so it's cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I still have it on my to-do list to actually upload that video. So sorry about that. And then I'll put this on Alex to-dos upload last meeting video. All right. And I guess then I'll talk a little bit about the cleanup issues that you mentioned with like multiple accounts. I think that so I think I made a couple of fixes there, so that should probably help. Okay, so first thing that I kind of wanted to socialize, probably won't take too much time, is the public loader. I'll link the spec here, the generalized loader. So, okay. All right, so I started drafting this spec. I shared it out maybe a couple of weeks ago about having significant write performance and reliability improvements. And then Kunal and Nicholas, you guys all know everything I'm talking about right here. I'm just kind of going over this after the fact for everybody else listening in YouTube land. But the background behind this proposed change is that we have a number of different cartography data types. And if you have as many jobs as we do, then it's going to be the right performance of it can be a big bottleneck in your decision whether to run cartography or not. And so this is compounded by the fact that we have cron jobs running cartography that live in a separate Kubernetes cluster than what the Neo4j stateful set runs in. So there's additional network latency involved here. Not ideal. And so this is the way that things have to be. So to deal with this, we need to make some code changes to make things more reliable and make things faster. and also make things more generalizable for other future plugin developers. So the problems that I wanted to solve here is that too many round trip times give slow performance. Loading too much data at once, on the other hand, also results in unpredictable crashes. Network latency makes it worse. And each plugin loads data using own handwritten queries. So this process, it's painful, especially if you're just onboarding to Neo4j. So the requirements wanted, it had to be reliable. I guess there's a couple of metrics in here that I put in here. It's got to be fast. It needs to be standardized, so you don't need to write one-off ways. And we have to, whatever solution we pick, we have to make sure that the software stays runnable as a standalone tool without needing to be a service. So you should, like the way that you run Cartography should be able to still be runnable as a CLI tool, or if you want to make it a service like what we have, that should be possible also. Anything that we pick should not block the possibility of adding near real-time data in the future. So visually explained, we kind of wanted to go from something like this, where you have all of these different data syncs, and then all of them doing writing to the graph in its own individual bespoke way, to something like this, where you have a funnel, where everybody performs their sort of data transformations to get to a point where the load function simply ingests a list of dictionaries. And so that list of dictionaries will be loaded in batches. So all the nodes will be created in batches. And then Neo4j best practice, I believe, is to run exactly one merge per transaction, just so that you keep it performant, because merges, apparently, there's some logic there that performs some, I guess, concurrent locks. And so if you have too many merges happening at once, then you end up stepping all over yourself with concurrency problems in the database. So you do one merge per transaction. You do one merge per each relationship per transaction. And so this should help. So if you have a set of functions that do this, so like right here, if you do create nodes and then do that in a batch, commit the transaction, same thing with relationships, given all of these property maps and everything, should be a clean way of interacting with this load function. Similar thing with the cleanup jobs, delete the stale nodes in batches, delete the stale relationships in batches. And then so example would be to convert something like this into something like this. And I'm still drafting this, but just letting everyone know that this is on our radar. I'm hoping to get this done within the next 2 weeks, but yeah, it's just a matter of having enough hours in the day and everything else like that. So this is the first milestone. A second milestone is to explore something called a CSV loader. I'm not going to get into details here yet because I'm not sure if this is something that we will need yet. So for now, let's evaluate performance after implementing this funnel, and then we can go into other data formats in the future.
This is really cool. So I think this solves some pain points with running cartography at scale. But then I'm also wondering, can this help fix any of the problems that we have with rogue cleanup jobs doing funny things? Like we saw issue 503 with Marco's multiple accounts problem. Internally at Lyft right now, we might have some similar problems where it's deleting vulnerabilities that we have. Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so that's going to be a little tricky. I think that because the cleanup job flow is kind of a separate flow than what the loader flow is. Cleanup jobs run in a little bit of background for those of you who have not actually looked at this code yet, but the way that cleanup and analysis jobs run is that you have a JSON file that defines the Cypher query that does the deletion jobs and does all sorts of stuff. The intent there was to allow people to make changes to the graph without needing to write Python code. And so with that, we have to, I think with that, like, it's harder to generalize all of those ad hoc queries that are all over the place because, well, by nature of a bunch of JSON files, they are ad hoc queries. So that will come later. I think that this kind of gets into that next topic that I put into the document about having restricted cleanup jobs. So I did a little bit. So unfortunately for now, this is going to need to be done on an ad hoc basis. I did a bunch of cleanup work by looking at every single deletion job in the graph, and then making sure that, at least for the AWS ones, that we're deleting things that are only tying up to the current AWS account. So if we do a deletion, we should not be doing a deletion that affects stuff that is in an account that is external or anything else like that. I know that there is an issue in GCP right now where every single time we do a cleanup, it deletes assets that are in projects that the sync process has not hit yet. And yeah, this is not ideal. This is bad, but it is on the radar. And then I believe there's an issue recorded for that. Definitely, like, help is appreciated for the GCP side, but this is a learning process that we've had. For now, let's work on generalizing the load, making sure we stop shooting ourselves in the foot with like these write performance issues. And then we can start to think about like, how can we generalize and clean up the cleanups, so to speak.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just thinking, like, if we have this funnel that almost all write jobs go through, in theory, we should have all the information needed to write automatic cleanup jobs. So this create nodes function, if you know exactly what kind of nodes and what kind of relationships you're making, ideally we can be able to just automatically generate cleanup jobs based on these things, based on the create nodes, based on the create relationships. But I get what you mean. I think it'd be cool in the future to automatically make cleanup jobs.
Yeah, let's.
The reason I'm bringing it up is because I think that it could. I mean, I don't want to scope. I don't want to have like scope creep, whatever. But like, if we design the create nodes and create relationships methods correctly, we'll have all the information we need to auto generate the cleanup jobs. And I don't know if maybe the way it's written right now would already give us that, but I don't know. I just like to keep it in mind. So maybe we can build these to do more in the future. These are like, I think these are the most important parts of the graph, right? This is the part where rubber hits the road. We can collect a lot of data.
Yeah, agreed. So yeah, definitely would want to standardize those cleanup jobs. I feel like that's going to be I'm not saying that that's going to be like a larger job. I'm saying that's like a different phase of the job, because that's like a different part of the code base. But absolutely something that should be put on our roadmap.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. So I'll record that there. And it also, like, in general, like, if those of you want to do kind of larger changes to the graph or more core changes to the graph, the best way to go about it is, draft up a little one-pager and then socialize it, and we can talk about it, like either at this meeting or on Slack or in comments in the document. Yeah, definitely want to welcome discussion like that. Yeah.
I also want to bring up. Have you thought about using any like Neo4j Python libraries to do this? I want to go over like why you want to like do this yourself versus using a library, some sort of like other Neo4j library that also has one merge per, or like yeah.
Let's add that as a possibility. So research Neo4j ORMs, perhaps Py2Neo or anything like that. On I guess like initial research on experimentation, like the way that I've seen them do it, I'll need to double check. But like that one time when I went looking at it, I guess I had some concerns on performance, and I thought that like maybe we could do it a little bit better with like the way that we do our unwinds and the way that we handle certain other conditions. But given that we're effectively going down to only nodes and then only only relationships, I think that's a very valid point.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. Rather than reinvent, let's avoid reinventing the wheel whenever possible.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason we want to go with those is if they're already really well written. Maybe they auto generate docs, what have you. Maybe they do a bunch of other cool things. Maybe they auto be cool if they just automatically built a node to relationship like docs graph thing, right. Or if they also already have all the Neo4j best practices put in. Maybe under the hood they also do one merge per transaction, things like that.
Right. Yeah, good point. Good point. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Okay. What else we got? Okay. Docker Compose. So this one is kind of neat. And then, yeah, if you can take a look at this, Kunal and Nicholas later on, like this is Ryan Lane, former Lifty, put this up, adding the ability to have a Docker file. So revisiting this idea of being able to quickly test cartography changes with a container setup. And I'm pretty much almost ready to go with this change. I'm basically ready to approve. I just would like extra eyes on it. And the way that this is set up right now is that it supports only GitHub. He's documented how to set it all up and everything, which is awesome. And so yeah, right here, so this is the to-do item. AWS credentials can also be mapped in using volumes, and then as a to-do, document how to do this correctly. I guess for this, like I mentioned in my comments, we want to make sure that we're documenting this in a way so that we don't encourage users to write creds to disk and keep them there. Ideally, we'd want them to be mapped in with environment variables. So coming up with a smart way to instruct them on how to provide those environment variables and then make that available to the underlying containers. Let's aim for that. And then ideally, we would want a way to kind of generalize that across not just AWS, but for like the other modules.
I mean, for Docker Compose, you can just set up the environment variables, right, in the environment section. Like this is usually for just local development. So if you have the environment variables in your Docker Compose file, presumably that should be okay.
Okay.
Scroll up a little bit.
Sure.
I've actually thought about adding this too, but I just haven't had time. But this is up to the very top.
Okay.
Good, right? Docker Compose YAML. Scroll down a little bit, sorry. Yeah, down there. Okay, so you see the environment section, line 15?
Mm-hmm.
Those are environment variables.
Gotcha. Right. I think what Alex is saying that right now they're like statically specified there. I think he wants to be able to pull those environment variables like from the running environment, right?
Yeah.
Well, but you wouldn't be running this, like presumably you wouldn't be running this stuff in production. I mean, I would imagine that this would just be for local development, or am I misunderstanding the intent of the
Right, but then you wouldn't want a developer to be putting their, I guess, even test creds or read-only creds on a disk file on their laptop.
Yeah.
So what we can do is we can put environment variables, like real environment variables, and attach them to like other like Docker internal environment variable. I don't know how to say it, but look at this line here. We can just add this, and we can tell users to have some sort of environment variable, like AWS secret key, whatever.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable. Yeah, you have the like environment variables for the configuration, but then the secrets should be somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should just do this. Yeah, that should be good. I hope.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, if you have a couple of minutes, maybe like take a quick skim on this PR. I'm not a big Docker expert. I don't know what I'm doing most of the time here.
I'll take a look after, and I'll suggest that. I think we can get rid of that to do pretty quickly.
Cool. Yeah, so just like being able to recommend like a generalized way to do this, to supply it for like the other modules, that'd be like super ideal. But then I'm not going to make having a generalized way be a blocker for letting this PR come in. This is a good starting point, I think.
Yeah. No, I think this is completely fine. Like, yeah, and I think I'll add that I approve, but I'll hold off on you guys.
No. I'm basically good. I just would like a set of extra eyes so that once you're good, please put in the approve, and then we should be good to go to merge.
Yeah, I'm fine with this, and we can iterate on this fairly fast if we need anything, anyways.
Cool.
I mean, from the local development perspective, obviously this kind of stuff works super nice, and we'll need it if we want to start showing the ETL stuff. We'll need to do that in Docker Compose also.
Okay. Cool. This is super. This helps. Like, it feels almost like a marketing thing too. People can just start using start using cartography in a matter of minutes now. That's awesome.
Well, yeah, I mean, hopefully they there might be extra configuration they need, but yeah.
We got to make it as easy as possible for those people to start using this. We got to hit these 5K stars in GitHub next to OKR. 5K stars.
That's right.
Make this a marketing team instead.
Well, we're only like maybe 99 stars away from 2,000. Almost there.
That's not bad.
Next milestone.
That's not bad.
Not bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I want to bring up, I think when we had talked with Amazon about cartography, especially when we talked with Andrew, he talked about like decomposing cartography and having modules and things like that. Alex, do you have any concerns about like having this document compose here versus like building a separate repo to like do this stuff? I'm curious. Any concerns about having this all together? I know you once upon a time had concerns about Lyft writing Docker stuff.
Oh, yeah. So I guess yeah, I think that there were the original concern there was to create a Docker container that we would endorse as something that you would run in your production environment. And I think that the conversation possibly got a little bit muddled with that. And we went back and forth a little bit, and then there was a little bit of possible miscommunication. And then that PR that was submitted that time ago went cold. And then so that's kind of what happened. And then so, really glad that Ryan is coming back to help pick up the trail on that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, the last issue about like we have an issue listed about documenting containerization options, and then so you can look at that in issues. And then so I had a little bit of a proof of concept on how you could expose AWS stuff to that container also. But yeah, given like the amount of people that we had as maintainers at that time, and then as it was just something that we didn't really have the horsepower or bandwidth to review and merge in and unfortunately prioritize. So
gotcha.
Yeah. So apologies on that, but then sometimes that's just how it works in open source. Okay. So I hear that Gaston had a talk on cartography not too long ago, just 2 days ago, I think, actually. And then do we know if that was recorded? I think it was, right?
It was. Should I get the recording, or I can send it to you?
Yeah, that'd be great. And then like we should have a little bit of a section in there about like having more talks. I know that the README has Sasha's old talk at B-sides, and then so having Gaston's talk in Spanish could help out with the audience. So that's pretty awesome.
That'd be great. Maybe we can get some English subtitles too. We can get that all figured out. There's probably a service does that now.
Probably.
Yeah, Google.
Google, perfect.
Or if it's
Great
on YouTube,
service.
right? So
yeah. Maybe it's on YouTube.
Yeah.
If it's not on YouTube, I'll ask Ryan to put it on YouTube.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and I kind of talked about this with like cleanups in multiple accounts. So basically, this is unfortunately a hand process of just going through and then making sure that all your deletions are tying up to the larger entity, whether that be an account or a project or whatever the given cloud calls it.
Cool.
And that's all from me. Anything else you guys wanted to add?
I think the ETL, like we need to figure out how to make the ETLs available. Once ETL stuff works at Lyft, at least for something that's even marginally more complex, we need to figure out what's the right path to get that into open source. Docker Compose, totally on board with that. I think that's basically, then we can say, well, here you can run like a little mini Airflow, and I don't know about Spark. I mean, the ingestion stuff, at least, I don't think we'll do in Spark initially. We don't want to have too much extra shit, but like figure out some way that you can run this stuff and take advantage of it.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Nicholas has been working on stuff to add Airflow DAGs for both exposing data in other dashboards and also for cartography ingestion, which is super, super exciting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting once we can get this a little further on in Lyft, and then kind of homogenize with open source. It'll also be nice for drift detection. It should make that a little bit simpler and easier to manage.
I just had a little note there that we've been talking about this for a very long time now, but so it's like extremely exciting that we're making movement on this now.
Maybe just do like
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, it'd be cool to just like a little doc on all the benefits of using Airflow. Like if somebody were to somebody were new to cartography, and we're like, why do we use this complicated thing called Airflow? It'd be cool to see like just a quick doc about the pros and cons of using it. If you have the time to like write that up, that'd be cool.
We've been talking about this since the very first meeting.
Has Nicholas really? Or no, everyone has been.
Yeah, we've all been talking about this for a very long time. And then back last year in February, we said we'll do this in 3 months. Oops.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, yeah, like it's like just, every level of, like we say, okay, we take advantage of this level of abstraction that like Airflow provides, but then you have to have an Airflow cluster. Then you need to get used to whatever you have internally at your employer. And then like, if you have Spark on top of that, that's like another level. So it gets, there's only, it's a fair amount, like if you have someone like me right now who's dedicated to trying to figure all of it out, it works okay, but there's a lot of complexity. One other thing I want to bring up that's quasi-related, but I think it's something that's interesting and I want to really look at in Q3 is a notion of more real time.
Sure. When you say real time, what do you mean? Do you mean like every
time? I mean, right now we kind of have the once a day and then wipe it, or wipe it and then once a day. Once we have the stuff once we have all of ingestion kind of available to us in DAG form, it would be interesting to start looking at a more streaming approach to ingesting the data. Maybe even not all of it, maybe just parts of it. Triggering on AWS events, etc. And it's very hand wavy because that's kind of hand wavy in my head. But I think it would be, that'll be one of the things I want to start looking at, kind of the next set of kind of fundamental improvements.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the next logical progression to this. Granted, not every data provider will have a stream, but some of them do, like AWS. So, yeah.
Yeah, but like, right, the one part's doing it more real time, then the other part is managing the historical data. And we'll, I think that'll be an exploratory process. Unfortunately, I can't promise the whole world yet.
So when you say more real time, do you imagine Airflow doing the bulk of the work here, using a lot of Airflow sensors, like maybe for CloudTrail, use an S3 sensor and?
Sensors we're just calling much more frequently, or I'm not sure how, at least internally at Lyft, Airflow integration with SNS is, but kind of figuring that out. Like basically, I'd like to have a proof of concept of this particular kind of DAG or sub DAG, like a few things, like let's say the list of admins or something, or GitHub repos, that changes and we can kind of keep it updated in our Neo4j database.
That'd be super cool. Yeah, like I think GitHub and AWS like offer a lot of push to S3 options, where they push to S3, and you can use SNS to.
You can just listen on the S3 buckets. That stuff is all fairly straightforward, but it's the integration with all of this, obviously. At
Lyft, it's good. At Lyft, we have a lot of good internal things, like a Lyft S3 sensor, things like that. It's interesting. I'm thinking in the Docker Compose mode now, where I'm like, okay, we'll help somebody just get Airflow set up just using Docker Compose. That's even possible. Probably is.
Oh yeah.
And can we use some of the more open source tools?
That's what I'm imagining. I mean, I want to first get Airflow working at Lyft for a bunch of this stuff. We'll basically be just reusing the existing code as libraries. Then figure out, possibly we'll look at your improvements to ingestion, Alex. And then, figure out how to port that back to open source. It might have a bit of a different form, but it's not really clear yet. We have to actually write it first and then see if it's any good.
Gotcha. It'll probably be good. Probably be good.
Good thing to have on the radar.
Yeah, oh, we can see if other people are enthusiastic about it, or is like, no, don't do that. Internally, at least, people like real time.
I think real time, I mean, we should always be thinking about like what kind of exact business need or scenario this unlocks. And at least if we were to ingest AWS events, then that effectively gives us basically incident response scenarios. You know, you have a new instance, you have stuff that's like exposed now, so you can have all sorts of event-driven workflows now.
Drift detection becomes 100x more powerful. Drift
Right.
detection becomes a real source for security incident response. We can send it straight to the SecIR, the Hive like kind of setup. I mean,
Yeah, and of course, like I guess we would have to find a way to reconcile the fact that certain data will be streamed in and other data is like much slower. And then
exactly.
Be...
I mean, there you're starting to get into real, like, legit data pipeline where you have a fast path and a slow path.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
Like you said, you know, we're probably better off first figuring out like a business case, like what one business case can use, you know, a faster path, and then figuring out from there.
Yeah, and I guess like cartography is all about tying all those things together so that if you have the hot path unable to join with the cold path, I don't know if that's ideal either.
Yeah, I'm and that's where you have the kind of historical data. Do you say, yeah, I mean, we'll figure it out kind of bit by bit, I think, and see what's actually workable.
We have a distributed view of the graph, and then this distributed view is inherently, you know, not always up to date, just because of you have this massive latency problem of getting stuff and representing it. It's kind of like a eventually consistent or like always inconsistent, and then this to some extent you have to accept some degree of inaccuracy in the current model.
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing I wanted to bring up that's kind of a consequence of moving this stuff to Airflow with Spark is that, so besides just, you know, trying to revive drift detection and make it also work in ETL land, which I think will be much easier, I would love to try and do a prototype of the attack graphs papers that inspired a lot of this. That will be, I think that might be like a Q3 if I'm like drinking late at night in the weekend. Like, you know, my wife's out doing whatever, all the scotch and try and knock out something. But just, you know, that's kind of an aspirational thing for me in Q4 probably.
Are you in Seattle? Alex and I will come over for scotch too.
Yeah, well,
I guess we'll need to get more scotch. I've kind of abused mine, but yeah, I mean, hopefully by then, like, I mean, I guess we're all vaccinated and like, you know,
Be careful about code written on Friday afternoon because you'll have to maintain it on Monday morning.
This would all be in Jupyter notebooks.
I'm terrified.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll have a bit more experience with the whole data flow stuff by that point. I think we'll have a better idea.
Yeah, Andrew knows me really well about Friday night beer coding sessions. But anyway, I'll record that though. What was that last idea? Oh yeah, attack graph stuff, right?
Yeah, like figure out like a nice narrow scope attack graph prototype or proof of concept.
Yeah, because it's interesting because this is kind of like this weird cartography is kind of at this weird intersection between some very, very involved data engineering stuff plus security stuff. So it's kind of at this intersection of two very involved domains, and you can get really deep into them depending on your expertise.
Yeah, I mean, right now we're, you know, compliance and a little bit of other stuff, at least for some of the stuff that's available. But like with a little bit more work, we can make it more fairly useful for some other stuff.
Yeah, the data engineering stuff helps us unlock other security stuff, and so it's kind of this, you know, working together.
So do we have any other exciting stuff coming from the open source community? Do you think, you know, Q3, Q4?
Typically, let's see, what do we got? let's look through here. So Chris has been talking about working on this route table support for AWS, and he's done some really great work in like representing our VPC pairings a whole lot more clearly.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. And this PR has been like, I've kept this fresh, but Siler from OCI has helped us with adding Oracle support. And this is something that will be very helpful for, it's another plugin. And then so I definitely need help in testing this. I don't have the ability to test this. So anybody else that's able to do that, yeah, let's work together there.
And yeah, this is something for Docker Compose. I'm a huge fan, but the next thing we'll want to do with Docker Compose is add local stack. Have you guys ever used that?
No.
Local stack is a local AWS analog. Gives you support for a bunch of AWS features, even in the free version. It's sick.
I've heard of this. Yeah. That sounds amazing. We absolutely should.
So as soon as this shit's merged, we should get that in there, because then we can do legitimate local integration testing with local stack.
But that could run in like every PR. That could be a test or something like that. Could run in GitHub Actions.
I mean, sure. I mean, we could probably set that up.
Cool.
You don't get everything, like, and maybe we could get Atlassian to give us like a free license for the full-on local stack for this. Probably not. But even if we just have S3 and Dynamo and a few other things, that's pretty good.
That's great. Yeah.
I'll add a comment to this effect too.
Okay. I see some, plugin requests, feature requests, reliability improvements, and yeah, there's a task here for long-term improvement with like near real-time updates, which is, basically what you're talking about, Nico. And let me just
more quickly write AWS sync plugins. Nice.
Yeah, so this is very similar. This is basically the precursor to what I have had drafted with this funnel loader spec thing.
I think all these big long-term changes are going to fundamentally change the way we use cartography. I hope they add a lot more use cases.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
It feels like if every search took 20 minutes, how would you use it? I mean, versus if it takes a second. I mean, if we get like a lot of these data flowing in milliseconds after it shows up, I think, sad enough, I think Sakai will just stop using detection services. The detection team can go away. It's all just in the graph, low key, in a good way.
Yeah, it's. I mean, as soon as we just have this stuff more robust, then we'll be able to, and hopefully, like I really pray that it'll operate well and have minimal outages and shit. But then we can do a bunch of fun stuff. I hope that we can spend Q3 and Q4 going off on fun like unicorn jousting hunts and like building cool things that are useful.
That's the goal. That's the dream. And I like the term unicorn jousting hunts. We're going to use
that I was trying to think of something more absurd than jousting against windmills.
Perfect. Put that in a tech spec one day, please. That's
Well, I'm making a new label. Don Quixote.
Absolutely.
All right.
Oh man.
Okay, I think that's all that we have for today. Unless you guys got anything else? Cool.
Oh, one thing I did just check with Ryan, and Gaston's slides had been approved by legal, so we can bring them to the open source talk, but they didn't record his talk.
Oh no. Oh no.
Ryan says it was an ephemeral, once-in-a-lifetime experience. So that's why they didn't record it. So either I or any of us could just do Gaston's slides here. Or, next sync.
Sure. Yeah. Are you able to link them on here? Or?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and then we'll just like PR it up.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess the headings are in Spanish.
I think so. I'll see what it says, but I'll link them after the.
All right. Yeah,
I'll
sure.
probably link them later.
Sounds good. All right. I'm gonna call it for this one. Give everybody back about 15 minutes.
Cool. Okay. Talk to you guys later.
See ya.